afternoon. I'm Melissa Anderson. I'm on the selection committee of the festival. Please welcome back Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sanofsky. I will start off the Q&A by asking a question. I have many, but I'm sure there are many here in the audience. And when you do ask questions, I believe we'll have volunteers handing microphones, so just please wait for the mic. Do you think that your almost 2-decade pursuit of this case and exposing the injustices may have had anything to do with this surprise hearing in August?
Well, I think there's a superficial answer and then there's a deeper answer. The superficial answer is I definitely think, and we were told that the state of Arkansas was actually quite concerned about the broadcast of the film, which was originally scheduled for November. We originally wanted to have this film play in November, just going into the evidentiary hearing to just alert the media and the world that this evidentiary hearing was happening. So I do think they were very concerned both about the evidentiary hearing, because that was the first positive, the overturning of the circuit court by the Arkansas Supreme Court to allow that evidentiary hearing was the first positive decision. You can see it in David Rauch's, when he goes, huh? He's like surprised. He's looking for time, because they're so used to just the cakewalk at the Arkansas Supreme Court affirming everything. And so they were both very concerned about this film, and they were very concerned about the actual evidentiary hearing. I think that was the bigger concern, quite honestly. The larger issue is, I do think the films have obviously had an impact, but I think really what has won the day here is, the 10,000 acts. I mean, I am so amazed at how many people around the world just joined this movement. For the the Eddie Vedders and the Johnny Depps, there were just tens of thousands of regular people, and I think that those were like really just selfless acts of dedication to this cause that really push it over the edge. It's astounding to me just how big the support was.
Right. Bruce, do you have anything to add?
I think Joe did a good job.
Fantastic. Okay, we will now take questions from the audience. Yes, way in the back.
I have 2 questions. First of all, we've had 40 years of hysteria over satanic ritual and crimes with the McMartin preschool trial, Geraldo Rivera at age 7 getting on and saying there are 1 million Satanists in the United States. And part of the hysteria is caused by the growth and the political activism of fundamentalist Christianity. And when you talk about a case like this in Arkansas, you're in Bible Belt America. So I wondered how that affected the perceptions of you all on doing this film. And secondly, a lot of local police jurisdictions for years, including NYPD, did not take Department of Justice training in handling missing children cases, doing routine sweeps, etc. What did you find in the case of this particular circumstance that might have been a similar pattern? In other words, they weren't trained to look for kids who were abducted.
What went down, I mean, the world has changed dramatically. When we went down there in '93, I mean, we got there a few days after the arrests, so we really embedded ourselves right from the get-go. And, I don't want to be disrespectful to fundamental Christianity or religion, but not even a but. I think what happened here was a lethal brew of, this happened at a time when, as you said, there was this wave of satanic hysteria, and people really believed that stuff was happening, even though the FBI, shortly after this case came out, had discredited all of those claims. But this was a community, a region of the country, where people literally believe in heaven and hell, and that the devils walk amongst us. And so this wild tale that the prosecutors told was quite believable to people. To add to that, this is a region of the world where people believed in their authority figures without question. It's like even today, you know, the sister of Terry Hobbs says, you know, until we are told differently, we think these kids did it. They truly believed that what the police tell you is truthful. The other thing that really whipped all of this satanic hysteria was the local media. We were stunned at just, you know, it didn't take brain surgery to get down there and realize that something was amiss. I mean, we just, the moment we spoke to Damien, it took us a few months to negotiate the access, but once we sat down with him, it just didn't make sense. You look at Jason Baldwin's scrawny little arms. There's no blood at the crime scene. You're going to tell me that 3 teenagers are going to take 3 little boys into the woods and slaughter them mercilessly and not leave tissue and blood? I mean, just the whole thing didn't make sense, but the local media just, it was much easier to feed that monster of the daily headline and the evening news and tell the devil worshipping story. And I think the entire jury pool was polluted before this thing started, because they, you know, they believed in heaven and hell, and they believed in the police, and the media was telling them that these guys were devil worshippers. In terms of the police training, I mean, they had zero training, zero ability to, you know, deal with this kind of a crime.
And on top of that, you know, the bully pulpit, you know, every Sunday they were talking about the West Memphis 3 and their guilt and good versus evil. And when you had ministers going on the local news saying how guilty they were before, you know, jury selection, Joe and I would look at each other and say, these guys are toast. It was just unbelievable what was going on down there. And that brew, as Joe talked about, is very difficult.
How much time over the past 18 years would you say you spent in West Memphis, Arkansas?
Too much.
And did people begin to recognize you in the town?
Oh, we were those 2 Jew boys from New York. They recognized us.
I'm sure the welcome wagon was brought out every single time you
I'm
returned.
telling you, we had more baskets with flowers in them.
No, I mean, at first the town was, you know, when the films first came out, there was a lot of antipathy towards us, but we have to, over time, the community has come to embrace the truth. The media has done an about face, and you know, one of the fascinating journeys of this film, I think, is that the local media, I think, is very responsible for having helped convict these guys. But as time unfolded, starting in the the mid 2000s, the media actually, especially the local media, has been instrumental in righting the wrong. You know, so.
Yeah, they've embraced what we started it, you know, in the beginning. But we were not very well liked, you know, by the local media.
Other questions? Yes. Just wait for the mic, please. Is the microphone on?
I get mellow.
Just, there are a lot of questions, so maybe
Okay,
in the
yeah.
interest of time, just stand up and.
I was wondering at what point during the arc of the 3 films you realized that your roles were going to play an integral part of the story, and did you grapple with that at all as filmmakers and documentary?
You know, all 3 of these films raise all sorts of ethical and philosophical filmmaking issues. Not the least of which is the reliability of information and what is the nature of truth. I mean, after all, the second film, you know, figuring out what to put in the third film was hugely challenging, and we can talk about that in a minute, what those decisions were. But, you know, the second film follows the suspicion of Mark Myers, you know, and also follows the then theory of human bite marks, which was later discarded. And so it troubles me that we made a film and put it out in the world, and I think we're still proud of those films, but there are things in those films that I wouldn't put in the films today. And therefore, what is the nature of truth with the passage of time? I mean, from a filmmaking standpoint, this was a hugely fascinating, I mean, how often do you get a chance, let alone the release, which was unexpected, but you know, how often do you get a chance to revisit the same material with your own archival footage? I mean, all that archival footage in there is our 16mm work print. The scratches are not post-production affect. That's actually the work print. When we cut the film on the Steenbeck, it acquires, scratches. And the opportunity to revisit your work and decide what is relevant in 2011 and just leaving things out that are no longer relevant is, hugely fascinating. We always grapple with how much should we be in the film or not be in the film, and I think the dividing line is, at what point do we have an impact on the story? When in the first film, when Mark Byers, one of the stepfathers, gave us a knife and we opened it up and in the hinge was blood, we naturally became part of the story and had to grapple with it. There's a certain, I hate to say it, pomposity to the opening of the film where we are talking about the film, and part of it makes me uncomfortable because it seems like we're patting ourselves on the back, but on the other hand, it is these films that inspired this movement, and
it's a little pat. Just a little.
To me, the larger issue and why we feel okay putting ourselves, talking about the films and opening with the films, is that, why does it take 3 well-funded HBO documentaries and the millions of dollars from Eddie Vedder and Johnny Depp to give these guys the kind of justice and trial and investigation that they deserved 18 years ago? And so it is, these films did inspire change. And it's a sad comment on society that it takes some documentaries and wealthy celebrities to make that happen, because God knows we get letters all the time whenever these movies play from people wanting help. We're innocent. Obviously not everyone who writes you is innocent, but there have been hundreds of DNA exonerations in the last handful of years, and DNA experts say, and people like Barry Scheck say that that's just like the tip of the iceberg of innocent people in prison. So, why does it take films in this instance? So, anyway, so it is an issue to grapple with.
And it's obviously very personal to us. We believed when we made the first film, by the end of it, that these guys were innocent. And it's been with us on a weekly, daily basis for 18 years. And obviously we're thrilled that these guys are out and that we've been able to, have meals with them and to spend time with them and, now go on and have a great life. That's my feeling, that, maybe it's time to turn the cameras off and just let them live good lives. And I'm proud of them. I'm not sure I could live 18 years on death row and have the civility that Damien has. It's a nice thing.
Other questions? Yes, a woman with glasses. Yes. Wait for the mic, please.
Sorry. This is a very short question. I did see the 2 prior films as a many judge, and congratulations for tying up the story. But why, in your opinion, was the original judge, so adamant about refusing to even consider new evidence? He just wouldn't budge.
Yeah, it boggles our mind, and he was a huge impediment to this case, and his decision to run for state senate is one of the big breaks in this case, because he was no longer presiding, and it gave Judge Laser, who actually was a very reasonable man, and despite the abhorrence of that Alford plea, which just nauseates me to no end for reasons we can talk about, and what we didn't show, just because at some point you got to end the film, he actually, Laser, in that hearing, gave a very lengthy explanation of the Alford plea and went out of his way to make sure people understood the profession of innocence part. He's actually a good guy. Burnett, he's a former prosecutor. These guys have their careers invested in this case. I wonder how they sleep at night. Do I think that Burnett thinks they're innocent? I wouldn't say that, but one of the fundamental things that that has come out of this film for me is just forget the issue of killing people, which is a big death penalty argument, just the human fallibility issue means. It's just morally outrageous to have a death penalty because people dig in and have their entrenched positions. And Burnett is a classic example of that. He's a former, I mean, we didn't, have the time to show it, but I mean, in the trial, he would offer, he would suggest objections. I mean, it was just, this guy felt at the time that they were guilty, and they just did not back off of those positions, and it's disturbing.
It was like having 3 prosecutors instead of 2.
I have a follow-up question about the Alford plea. Is it true that the lawyers for Damien, Jason, and Jesse are want to continue for a full exoneration for them? Is that still in the works?
Yeah, yes, and we hope this film can be useful in that regard. But really, the implication of that Alford plea is just, it was very bittersweet to experience it. A whole range of emotions. On the flight down, we didn't really know. We were actually mixing the film, getting ready for Toronto when we were told that something big is happening. We weren't told, legally they couldn't tell us, but we were told enough to know, and we assumed they were just getting exonerated. So we're like, oh my God, we got to change the title of the film, and what, oh my God, how great they're getting out. And by the time we experienced the day, first of all, the title is perfect because they still have this sword of Damocles hanging over their head. And it's just really disturbing that the state of Arkansas didn't have the courage to fully exonerate these guys. Shame on Arkansas if they let convicted child killers out of prison, and shame on Arkansas if they didn't fully exonerate them.
Shame on them for not going out after the person or persons that did it.
Yeah, I mean, the real killers, Scott Allington said it all. We did this so that we aren't going to get sued. It's just.
They were clipping coupons to save a little money for the state.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Wait for the microphone, please.
I realized that.
Wait for the microphone, please.
I saw at the time, even until this time, and you don't have much to do over there. You go to church, you drive a truck, whatever. I don't want to ridicule anything. Do you think that because of the high rate of the Christianity movement at that time, and even despite of the influence that they say that separation of church and state had a big influence in this case, and kind of got sealed it, and being that maybe the judge was a churchgoer himself, may have had an influence in this case at all?
Yeah,
I went to church on Sunday. The rest of the week, who knows?
I don't want to overly bust on Christianity, it definitely, it's what I think we said before. It's, people were, first of all, and, it's been very controversial ever since the first film, less so now, sadly, but it's been very controversial that we opened the film with that horrific footage. And the reason we do that is that you have to understand just how shocking the crime was in order to understand how a town can go into this mass hysteria of believing, a ghost story. But I think one element of that believability is just religious fundamentalism, that people were scared of the devil and believed in the devil, and I think that played a huge role. I think if this crime happened in New York or LA, Damien wouldn't have been picked out as the local weirdo because he would have been like 10,000 other kids, and I don't think that religious fervor would have allowed people to suspend their rational analysis of the case.
We have time for one last question. Yes, in the back, black hair and glasses. You. Yeah, just wait for the microphone. No. I was looking at the woman in the way back.
In the way back.
Please stand. Make yourself known. Yes, excellent.
As the filming progressed throughout the 3 documentaries, what did it feel like wondering if the people you were interviewing were actually guilty, especially the second and now the third?
Meaning the West Memphis 3?
No, the parents.
Oh,
the stepfather
Byers and
parents.
Hobbs.
Yeah, yes.
I don't want to get into the position of pointing fingers at anybody like the West Memphis Three. I mean, they had their finger, everybody pointed their finger at them. I don't know whether Mark had anything to do with it or Terry. I can't say. And the only 3 people who know who did it are, well, 4 people, say, are the 3 boys and whoever did it. And we don't have any definitive answer. And we would like investigators to go out there and really see if they can find who did this. Otherwise, it'll happen somewhere else in some other part of the country. But it was important that we at least put some focus on Mark because of the type of person he was, you know, and he's an extreme. And then Terry, you know, he's a bit of an angry guy. Could he have done it? I don't know. And I'll never say this person definitely did it, but I can say that the West Memphis Three didn't. And that's from a lot of years. And I haven't had any doubts since Joe and I flew down there in June of '93. Once we had a chance to meet the families, the lawyers, and most importantly, meet the West Memphis Three. You know, you just sensed it. And just happy they're out, you know.
And again, you know, often people, like, and maybe I'm being a little naive or in a state of denial, but you know, I don't think the films point a finger. You know, the second film follows the suspicion directed towards Byers, and this third film follows the suspicion directed towards Hobbs, but I don't think the film is manipulating that or pointing fingers, but the utility of that and the importance of that is, you know, for capital murder, the measure of the law is beyond all reasonable doubt, and there is so much doubt in these cases that we continue to make these films because these guys deserved a new trial.
Great movie, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming.